Okay, so we are arrived at the last part for the series, and we have to tune the rendering parameters for Krakatoa, and then we have to work at the compositing. So the first thing I like to do is to check that all the PRT loader are loading all the right files. So let's go for the first. Okay, then we go to the second one. If you have the possibility, you can render more particles, because we'll have not so much particles inside the compositing, so we'll have to make some tweaks to use it in the right way. So if you can make a test with a higher volume of PRT cache. Let's go to pick the last one. Okay, so sorry. We have our big particle system, as you see. You see that we have a lot of stuff there. And then we have the text that is forming, and maybe we can remove the particles at the end. So if we go to render this frame, now we are using the basic setting for Krakatoa. So it will be just to see how it looks. It is retrieving all the particles, as you see. Obviously, in this case, it will be a little bit slower because we have a lot of particles, and it needs to make the shading for all the particle layers we have. So let's wait. Okay, it is working. You see that we have 24 million particles, and that's the actual result it is preparing. Okay, you see it is really a lot of stuff. That's the actual result. We can see with a different value for the particle density, but let's open the user interface. Actually, we have the override color for the particles, but now we'll tweak it. And that's the density. I think that's nice. Obviously, if you have a lot of particles, you will have no grain there. That's clear. So let's go to some frames later to see how it is looking, for example, there. So render again, and you see it. The look is really nice. We have a lot of swirl. We have the gas that is forming the shape there. We have the lighting with the colors, so it's really nice. So you see, it is working nice, but we have the possibility to control the coloring of the particles just based on the look of the single PRT loader. So let's load the first one. We go in isolation, and that's the result. If we go to render, you will see how it works. Okay, it is faster obviously to render, and you see that's the look with the motion blur. I like to see at the first frame, so we see how the particles look with the override. Now we remove the override color, and we'll work to have some coloring done using Magmaflow. Okay, that's the look. Let's go in Krakatoa, and we remove the override color. Okay, now we have to add a magma modifier. We open the magma editor, and there we can play with the particles. So the first thing we have to do is to create an output. So right mouse button, create output. That's the output data we are trying to obtain. We go to select the type of data, and we decide for mapping to. In this way, we are mapping the color of the particles using the mapping coordinates, and we'll use this value. Obviously now it is red because we have no connection at the beginning. So the input data is that we like to control the color based on the speed, the velocity of the particles. So we have to create an input channel. So we can, for example, use the create menu and then input channel. And you can decide automatically there to use velocity, so you can select velocity. Okay, now the velocity is connected to the output, so it will pick the velocity parameter for every single particles, and it will use it to control the particle color. To control the particle color, we have to use a map, and in this case we can use a texture, and the texture can be for example a gradient. So we go there to create a material, and we call it PRT volume 1. We assign this one to the particles, and then we create a gradient ramp to control the color for the particles. So let's go in the diffuse, let's wait, and in the standard we select the gradient ramp. Nice. And we choose for the color. So I like that at the beginning the particles are something like a bluish color. At the end it will be white, and in the middle we can have something like a pink color. And this way, depending on the speed, it will use this gradient of color. So let's close and back in the Magmaflow. There now we have to choose how to control the coloring. So if we go to render now, it is retrieving the particles. Okay, you see that the coloring is different than before, and it is using a lot of bluish because the speed actually is at the beginning because there is no moving particles. Let's go, for example, there, and let's go to see what happened inside the rendering. And it's possible that we have again something like bluish color for the particles, and as you see we have mainly the bluish. That's why we are just using this parameter as controller. We have to control the value to decide how to use it. And the first thing we have to use is the magnitude. In this way we are picking the parameter as a magnitude parameter, and we can use this one from there. So we are using to create the menu, and inside the vector we use magnitude. So we are using as input the vector of the speed of the particles, and depending on the vector of the speed we have a magnitude that it will be the value. So we'll have the conversion between the vector value, so the direction of the velocity, in a magnitude, a power value. If we go to render in this way, we go to calculate, it is calculating the omni and all the other stuff. You see that something is changing and the color is a little bit different than before. So you see that now we have a problem. We have essentially a problem for the type. It is saying that we have a problem with the value because now we have a different value as data coming from there and arriving to the output. So let's control the amount using a divide. So we'll divide this value. So arithmetic, divide, and you can drag and drop there. It is connected. In this case, if we use 1, obviously we are just obtaining the same value. I like to have a lower value to control how the speed will choose the color to be used. let's say for example 8, and then we have to convert the data. So we have a convert, and we need the 2 vector. We can use all the axes, or we can use directly the speed just over one axis, the x-axis, and connect there. Let's say auto, so it will control automatically step by step, and you see that now it is green. So that means that there is no more error. In fact, you can see that there we have current modifier, no errors. If we go to render, obviously you have to remember that we have a lot of light with colors. So obviously the particles are picking a little bit the color from the other light. So let's go to animate the light. Animate by name, and let's go to use the light. We have the spot and the omni. We have also the other omni there. Okay, so let's work just over the light, and let's say that for a moment we have all white colors. So you can see just using the basic lighting what happens to the particles. Let's go to render. You see that we have mainly bluish color. Let's see, for example, there where we have the particles moving. Using the divisor, you will have a different value for the particle colors. So you see that actually it is using just the bluish and a little bit of more clear color there. We have also to remember to change something, because something I was not doing is that you see we have a mapping 2, but there we have still mapping channel 1. So let's change to mapping 2. Let's go to render again the particles, and now you see it is working better than before, because we see the changes of the colors for the particles. So depending on the speed, you see we see the color also inside there, the viewport. So we see the bluish and the white and the other particle colors. Okay, let's use, okay, so we have to move to the other particles. So let's go out and let's save. We can go to the PRT loader number 2. So let's select this one and hide, and back to the particles. So let's try to render this one. Okay, you see that this one actually is picking the green color of the particles. So let's assign a magma modifier to this one too. Open magma modifier. And let's do really fast the same thing. So create output node. Let's select as output the mapping 2 as channel, and the input will be an input channel, and we'll use the velocity. Then we need a magnitude. So create nodes, vector, magnitude, and it is connected. Then we need to divide the value. So create node, arithmetic, divide, and that's connected. Let's move this one, and this one to have more space. And then we have to convert the data. So create menu, and we have the convert to vector. And we can connect this one. Okay, so now it is working. So the mapping number 2, it will use material. So let's go to create a material for this one. So this one will be PRT volume 2. We can assign it, and we go to create a mapping. Again, a gradient ramp, map channel number 2, and let's say that we use something like an orange color, then we have a red color, and then we have the white at the end. Let's change something just to have something different. We can use also a noise if we like, so maybe we can go back to the previous one too, and we can create some irregularity in the coloring. Let's use a really low scale, and let's change a little bit the thresholds there to have more contrast between the two colors, and the amount will go for the maximum, so you see we have a lot of noise. And the second one, we say the same thing, but I will use an higher scale, so we'll have big area with different colors. Again, like this one, and like the previous one, we'll make some contrast between the colors. Let's go to render. Okay, you see that mainly it is picking the yellow color. Let's start to divide the speed. Let's go, for example, for 35 and render again. It seems similar. We have some reddish just there, so let's go to see when the speed is higher, when the part. Okay, you see that now we see the changes. You can see it there. And let's see if maybe we can go for a more little mapping there. So you see now we see yellow and orange. Let's go to render. Okay, you see we have a little bit of orange, a little bit of yellow, so we have some coloring inside the rendering. Let's save, and let's do the same for the others too. So back to the complete visualization. Let's go in the PRT loader 3 and hide. So there we have the main strange swirl inside the text. If we go to render this one, you see that we have this green stuff. We can manage the color, obviously, so we can do something we done before. We do the same thing. So magma modifier, open. Let's go in auto to see some errors. So create output node, and we go for, let's go for the outputs, and this one again will be the mapping number 2, and we'll have the input. It will be the velocity, and there, just to be sure, we have a really low velocity. So I mean, it will change not so much. So maybe we can just control the density. So let's remove this one and let's use a new magma modifier. And let's open it. Okay, a new output node, and this time we like to control the density of the particles. We can just maybe do something really simple. So I like just to control the density, so we can use just an input value. To create just a value, we have to use the input and use the input value, and obviously we need a float, because there we need a float value. We can connect. Let's go to auto. You see there is no errors. If we go to render in this way, we'll have the density controlled by the Magmaflow. So you see it is using this one. We can go there and say 0, 1, so 10 times left, less than the density we are using. And as you see, we have a lower density in rendering. So we are controlling just the density of this particle system. We can go lower. So this is a percentage of the density for the main particle system rendered with Krakatoa. So we are just controlling a different value there for this PRT loader. Okay, let's see what happens when we see the complete text. Okay, you see this just a little bit visible, and that's nice. Let's get to work on the latest value, and I mean the PRT loader 4. Let's set to hidden so we see just this one, and let's go to see how it works. So that's the particle system, and I like to see how that's looking. So let's go to make a preview. You see that we have the strange gaseous effect, and we have the colors coming from the rendering we done before. So we have to control the coloring due to the this particle system. So we can mainly do the same thing we done before. So I like to go to have another magma modifier. So let's go for magma modifier, and let's do all the same thing we done before. So we go there, we have the output nodes, is a mapping with channel number 2. We have as input, we have an input channel, and there we use the speed, so the velocity, and then we have the magnitude to convert the data. So create node, vector, magnitude. Let's attach this one. Then we go for a divide, so let's use the divide. And the divide, maybe let's go with 1 to see how it works. And then we have the conversion, so convert to vector, and then we connect this one. Let's go to create the material. We pick this one, and this one is the PRT volume 4. Let's assign it, and there we go for the gradient ramp. The gradient ramp will have channel number 2. I just clicked to the auto to see the update. So you see that the particles are moving from black to gray. And let's go to have the colors. So let's say, for example, white there, and then we have a greenish, electric greenish there, and we have a bluish, and maybe it will become green really fast. Let's update, and you see that the particles are picking the right colors. And then we can control the noise as always. So let's go for 1, and we'll have the fractal. The size will be bigger, and let's go to have again a little bit of differences and contrast. So with the update, you see that we see the differences coming out, and just clicking over the update on the Krakatoa modifier. If we go to okay, that's the render, so we can tune a little bit the divisor to have a different result. Let's see what happens if we have, for example, 5. So the output value will be different than before, and just pressing the update. Okay, we have more greenish value. let's go to render to see the differences. We'll see it together so you can see how it is working with me. It is preparing the light. It is sorting, and we have still a lot of white, maybe just a little bit more green there than before. Let's see when we have the shape forming. There we should have more visible decoloring, and you see that there is more visible the differences with the other colors. Let's see when the text is near to be done. We should have just some gas all around, and that's the result. Now we can go back to see all the particle layers. We can go back to control the lighting there with different colors. So let's go for something like a greenish color there. Maybe we can have something like a purple color there, and maybe we can go for a bluish color there. We can try to see some frames like this one to see how it works, and obviously it will need tricks in compositing because I just prepared not so much particles for the compositing. As you see, that's the result. Is really not so final because we have a lot of grain and we have, as I said, a low amount of particles. But it is interesting because we have some gaseous effects there and we have a lot of coloring, so it will be really strange. Let's see some frames when the text is near to be created, something like there, for example, and then we can move to the next step. And that's the actual result. You see, it is really nice with all the particles when we stay away. So this means that if you have a lot of particles, you can do a lot of things also in the first part. We're under this one at maybe 900 per pixel, so we'll have more quality at the end. So now what we need is to render everything, so this one can be saved. And from the first pass, I need just the logo. And the logo will appear just at the end. So let's go at the end, and we can decide to have, for example, the text, let's say with the edit poly, that this one, and this one as the ID set to 1, and the other as the ID set to 2. Now we can add a material. We go for something really simple. So let's go to see the materials, and we go for a multi sub-object. Keep hold. We can use just 2 materials. That's it. Okay. The first one will be a bluish. Let's say that it's 50% self-illuminated, and the second one will be a white color, and also this one will be 50% self-illuminated. We just assigned this one, and let's go to render at 900. Let's see what happened. So that's the result. You see, it's really simple. We don't need something more special than this one. So let's save this frame, and this one will be, let's call it passes, and this one will be text beauty, and we go for a TIFF so we can use the alpha channel. So TIFF, and we go for having the alpha channel and save. Nice. Now we can let's save this one. now we can go back to the previous one and we can launch the render, and then we'll start on the last part to work at the compositing.